That Singapore Grand Prix was a little bit of a slog, wasn't it? Bit of a slow burn, delayed by an hour and then fizzled along gently for a while before getting a little more bubbly in the second half. But I'm going to use the Singapore Grand Prix to springboard into a few points. Let's start at the very beginning with the heavy rain that dropped before the race. It was clear quite early on that the rain was going to continue for long enough to force a delay to the start of the race. Now luckily, race control recognised this in advance and delayed the start procedure. Under normal conditions, the race was due to start at 8 PM local time, and the race start procedure is as follows. 40 minutes prior to the scheduled start, so 7:20 in this case, the pit lane opens up and cars can leave the garage to do a reconnaissance lap. They can do several reconnaissance laps if they want to feel out the conditions of the track, as often happens if the track has changed due to weather or temperature. But they have to keep going through the pit lane each time. Eventually though, the car has to make its way to the grid. Now with 30 minutes to go, the pit lane is closed after a 2-minute warning. If your car hasn't left the pits by this point, well, it's a pit lane start for you. Now with 10 minutes to go, the 5 starting lights act as a countdown, indicating 10, 5, 3, 1 minute, and then 15 seconds until the warm-up lap. At the 10-minute mark, only drivers, officials and team staff can stay on the grid. At the 5-minute signal, the cars must have their tyres fitted, the tyre blankets must be turned off, and team personnel must start leaving the grid. At the 3-minute mark, only 16 team members per car can remain. At the 1-minute mark, the engine must have been started. At the 15-second mark, all team members must have left the grid and be standing outside the track limits. Then, at the scheduled start time, the formation lap begins. All very simple and clear. Now, as you might recall from the Monaco Grand Prix, the race must be completed within 3 hours of the scheduled start time, no matter how many stoppages. In Monaco, that clock began at the scheduled start time of 3 PM local time and started ticking despite the race not having started. In Singapore, however, because race control got out ahead of the situation, the scheduled start time was moved from 8 PM to 9:05 PM, and that would be the new start time for the 3-hour limit. And this was one of the benefits of what race control did. At about 8 PM local time, they shifted everything forward 65 minutes, so the pit lane would open at 8:25 and close at 8:35 instead. Now, a lot of people argued that this ended up being an overly long delay, to the point where the track was a lot drier by the time the race actually started, to the point where it was easily a standing start on intermediates with no question of a safety car start, despite the earlier deluge of rain. There was the argument that they should have just got all the cars on the grid early, had them ready to go with a 10 or 15 minute notice as soon as the conditions looked good enough. And I do sympathise with that, and I see a lot of that merit. Speeding up procedures could be really useful, especially to broadcasters, locals, attendees, and well, anyone who might have plans following the race. However, giving that long run-up allowed the scheduled start to be delayed, gave F1 a proper starting procedure, and meant once we got racing, everyone knew what was going on with regards to the race clock and the running. We got a normal race, and a standing start too, which is always preferable to a safety car start. So actually, there is a lot to be happy about with how it was operated, even if we had to wait an extra hour. I would say, of course, it would be worth adding a secondary optional race start procedure in the rules in case of delay that speeds up the whole process. But there might be some grumble from teams and promoters who need all that time to get everything done. There was also a lot of consternation over why the stewards decided to wait until after the race to decide whether or not to penalise Perez for his safety car incident. And honestly, even after reading the stewards' decision, it still seems odd to me. I know stewards have to try and maintain a neutrality in how they deal with decisions and not allow whether an incident affects a race win or not to be part of their decision-making process. But knowing who's won the race really should be something that happens at the checkered flag, not 2.5 hours later, if it could be helped. The rule Perez broke was 55.7 of the sporting regulations that mandated that each car in the safety car queue must be spaced no more than 10 car lengths apart, including the leader to the safety car. Now Perez exceeded this 3 times during the race, once on lap 10, for which he got a reprimand, then twice on lap 36. During the first time he was given a warning, and then as it happened again on that lap, he got that 5-second penalty. Despite Red Bull saying he was finding it tricky to keep up with the safety car in the wetter parts of the track, the stewards didn't accept this, and therefore it kind of ends up being a bit of a cut and dry case. He was warned, and then he did it again. The rule seems pretty unambiguous, so they could have just given him a 5-second penalty during the race. And Perez could have mitigated this penalty by trying to pull out a gap over Leclerc, and then we'll all know who, at the end of the race, has won. Now luckily Perez did actually pull out this gap as a precaution, so we didn't have a late change of winner, but we still had to wait. and that's not great as a sport. It's too slow, and we do need to tighten up these post-race decisions unless there's really a lot of ambiguity. A 10-car length is pretty measurable, just like track limits are measurable. He did it 3 times. Case closed, give him a penalty, let's carry on with the race. So in this case, I am in favour of better procedure. Now this was another Singapore Grand Prix where we had to finish the race early due to hitting the 2-hour time limit. Singapore often flirts with the 2-hour limit due to the slow average lap speed and likely safety car periods. The wet conditions compounded this, so we hit the limit, but we did actually manage 59 out of 61 laps, so we only missed 2 laps. Not that bad. The 2-hour race time limit starts at the actual race start proper. Not the formation lap, but the actual lights out and away we go moment. There was some talk during practice this year about this race looking likely to breach the 2-hour limit even in the dry, but I'm really not sure where those calculations came from. Times in free practice 1, which was dry but with these new style cars, were about 3 to 5 seconds off the pace of the 2019 times, which I think is what started the concern. But a little bit of maths should ease that concern. So long runs and Friday practice were showing times of around 1 minute 49 on mediums. That's 109 seconds a lap. So let's imagine drivers do 149s on average for every lap of the race on a dry Sunday. That's 109 seconds times 61, which is 6,649 seconds. And then you go, well, okay, what is 6,649 seconds? Well, I'll tell you, it's 111 minutes or 1 hour, 51 minutes, which still gives us a 9-minute margin. And actually just on 61 pure laps, without pit stops or safety cars, you need to rise up to an average of 119 seconds a lap, or 1 minute 59, to breach the 2-hour time limit. So it seems pretty out of reach, all being normal. After all, the drivers were doing 148s at best at the end of the actual race on a greasy track, though they were low-fueled by that point. Okay, but you say pit stops. 1 stop is expected around here, and that adds about 30 seconds to your time. So actually you're now trying to beat 1 hour, 59 minutes and 30 seconds on lap time alone. But then you remember safety cars, a common feature around here. Safety car laps are about 2.5 minutes, say, so let's say 150 seconds, which is about 40 seconds longer than a normal lap. So very roughly, every lap behind a safety car adds 40 seconds. So let's say we lose 9 laps behind the safety car in the race. That's 6 minutes of time loss. So with the safety car laps and 1 full pit stop, you lose 6.5 minutes. So you're trying to beat 1 hour, 53 minutes and 30 seconds, which you can still do if you average 1 minute 52 seconds a lap on your normal laps, bearing in mind the 2-hour time limit will fall during your last lap in this case. So actually, it is still quite hard to breach the 2-hour mark here without safety cars and a bit of mayhem, despite these cars being a lot slower on street tracks like this. Now this is all a very rough estimate, but still. We did just have a race that was half run in the wet, we had 6 laps of virtual safety cars, 6 laps of safety cars, and we still only lost 2 laps. So fears were a little bit unfounded. Now we did have a very interesting race in terms of strategy, managing the pace on inters on a track that was drying in some places better than others. Like in qualifying, sectors 1 and 2 dried out a lot quicker than sector 3. The end part of the lap remained the sticking point for actually making the dry tyres work, as Russell found out. It's actually a very slow track to dry in general. While the street drainage is really good for getting rid of most of the standing water, puddles aside, the high humidity and lack of sun means the track stays damp and greasy for a very long time. Thus, we ran for 33 laps, which is over half distance, before the big shift to dry tyres, despite no actual rain falling during the race. But then there was George Russell. Having started from the pit lane, struggling for pace and suffering from there being no DRS, Russell was basically stuck in the middle of nowhere, so the team decided to try just sticking him on the dry tyres on lap 21, as the track really did seem pretty dry in most places by that point. Maybe they could have been heroes and jumped their competitors if they had found pace. But no, Russell was struggling even harder than before and basically stayed out through sheer spite despite his lap times. Here you can see he's a good 5 seconds slower than the likes of Norris, Stroll and Gasly, and was actually saved a little more embarrassment by the fact that a lot of these next few laps were run under virtual safety cars for Albon and Ocon's retirements. But you can see the crossover point clear as day as Russell finds the temperature, the grip and the dryness to make the medium tyres work, reaching parity with the intermediates on lap 31 and then being faster from then on. In a way, it was a shame really that Russell stuck with the dry tyres because everyone could instantly spot the moment to change from inters to dries. Now there's normally a big risk in being the first to jump. You could gain loads if you time it right, But you could also lose loads, as Russell did. But this time, Russell made it easy for everyone. And yet, there was still some disagreement in when to jump to dries. Gasly, like Bottas, Magnussen and Tsunoda, hopped onto the dries on lap 33, which was probably a little bit early as the dries still needed a warm-up period. Most of the grid came in on lap 34 or 35, which worked out pretty well for them. But Tsunoda, driving hell for leather on cold mediums on a greasy track, brought out a lap 36 safety car, which was perfect for McLaren, who were somehow still holding on to their inters. I think that safety car saved McLaren as they were a little late switching tyres and might easily have lost out to those already on dries. And a quick word on Perez, a great race from him, safety car rules notwithstanding, but I think it was all won in the start. He beat Leclerc off the line, but Leclerc did have the same pace as Perez and could easily have covered the lead had the positions been the other way around. Let's look at the lap times chart, but normalised to Perez. So here we can display Perez's lap times as a horizontal line running through the middle, and Leclerc's lap times we can display as a percentage of Perez's time lap on lap. So when Leclerc is above Perez, he's slower. When he's below, he's quicker. And generally speaking, he's basically driving to Perez's pace through the whole race, apart from just at the end when Perez needs to pull out that 7-second gap to cover his penalty. Sainz, on the other hand, was clearly the slowest of the three, never really being able to match their lap times. It was a disappointing and somewhat poor showing from Sainz, who just wasn't able to find the speed to get stuck in with the fight at the front, and this chart shows it. And that there was the Singapore Grand Prix. It was a long one for sure, and not the most exciting maybe from start to finish, but still gave us plenty to think about. And next, we're heading back to Suzuka for a hell of a high-speed challenge. Tricky to overtake, but hopefully fun to watch.